Hello there, you're very welcome to Thought Leadership. How and why do we get started? This is the post recording of the first installation of this webinar on the 14th of December 2020 at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. There's going to be a second edition of the webinar that's coming up next week, the 21st of December at 10 a.m. PST also. And it's possible there will be future editions of this webinar also. This is the slide deck that I used. There's not going to be a Q&A session included in this video, but if you do join the webinar, there will be that. So if you do want to register for one of those live webinars, it is a registration is required. dsrghostwriting.com/webinar/2001. You can also go on to dsrghostwriting.com. That's the address listed in the footer of this slide you're looking at. And there is an events tab or page, I should say, on that website. And if you click into that, you should have the webinar details. You can also follow DSR Ghostwriting, which is my writing business on LinkedIn. There's a LinkedIn page, there is a Facebook page, and there is a Twitter page. So go on to one of those forums and you'll find a link to register there. Registration is via Zoom, and it's, as I said, it's a registration. Registration is required to join the live edition of the webinar. So let me introduce myself. My name is Daniel Rosehill. I'm the founder of DSR Ghostwriting, which is a ghostwriting service focused really on thought leadership, as well as content marketing, but primarily thought leadership for technology clients. And you can go onto the website if you're interested and learn all about the service offering. So let me jump right in here to the structure of, as I said, this not live version of this webinar. So there's going to be a presentation. There will not be a Q&A session. And if you do join the live version, then that's how you can get your questions across. As I said, this is me, Daniel Rosehill. I'm the founder of DSR Ghostwriting. I specialize in working with technology clients to develop thought leadership campaigns. And there you have the Twitter handle at the bottom. DSR Ghostwriting, and you can look me up on LinkedIn. I'm Daniel Rosehill. That's my current headshot, so there shouldn't be too many Daniel Rosehills to sift through. I previously managed marketing communications, better known as Marcom, at two tech startups. I worked at a PR firm as well. So ground to cover in the webinar. Thought leadership. What is thought leadership? What are the key benefits? In other words, what can you get out of thought leadership? We're going to be talking a lot here about thought leadership versus content marketing, really exploring the differences between these two forms of marketing, these two components of the inbound marketing mix that we hear so much about. I'm going to just talk about the various differences there between those two things. Finally, we're going to be looking at formats for thought leadership, placement and distribution opportunities. And we're also going to be looking at the Edelman LinkedIn B2B thought leadership impact study. I know that's a bit of a mouthful. I'll say it again. The Edelman LinkedIn B2B thought leadership impact study, which last year's edition was, if I'm not mistaken, number 3 in their study of thought leadership effectiveness, and lots of interesting data to sift through there, which we will be going through in the intermediate slides. So firstly, let's get a bit of background material out of the way, because when we're thinking about thought leadership, and the most common charge made against thought leadership is that it's kind of a buzzword or jargon and so on and so forth. The truth is that content marketing and thought leadership are both older than you might think. And I just wanted to quickly to preface the information about thought leadership chart briefly their evolution. So dictionary references to thought leaders and thought leadership began appearing in the late 19th century. And as we're going to see, content marketing is also around that vintage. So you wouldn't really think that these things go back, but if you do plumb through the history, you can see throughout the 20th century, certainly in a few instances in the 19th century, in which businesses began using the written word and publications for sales and marketing related objectives. So, Copy Blogger cites the first usage as by Joel Kurtzman, editor-in-chief, strategy and business, and says he used the term to refer to people who had business ideas that merited attention. The full quote there is that a thought leader is recognized by peers, customers, and industry experts as someone who deeply understands the business they're in, the need of their customers, and the broader marketplace in which they operate. They have distinctly original ideas, unique points of view, and new insights. So the origin story of content marketing. So Benjamin Franklin published Poor Richard's Almanac way back in 1732. And his goal in writing that was to promote his printing business. Other examples can be found throughout the 19th century. So there's a few other seminal moments of professionalization in the evolution of content marketing. Those include the Jell-O company's publishing free recipe book designed to be used with the company's products, 1904. Procter & Gamble producing radio content in the 30s. Lego in 1987. Significant moment here, the founding of the Content Marketing Institute, the CMI, in 2010. Something that's missing between these two dates is content marketing, the first mentions, which were in the 1990s. So CMI's first distribution of Content Marketing World, a professional magazine for CCOs, chief content officers. HubSpot's founding, and of course HubSpot in 2006, and HubSpot has been instrumental in the development of content and inbound marketing. So that's roughly the evolution of content marketing. So the question of which came first, I mean, it's kind of up in the air to an extent, because a lot of activity that would have been considered thought leadership was being done before thought leadership as a word, came on the scene in the 1990s. And likewise, as we saw, content marketing was kind of emerging in the 20th century. So op-eds and editorials have been embedded in journalism for as long as printing has been commonplace. And you can find, as I said, examples in the 19th century. You do have trade magazines that are more than 150 years old. And I mentioned that here because trade magazines are very, very much tied up with thought leadership as a very common publication outlet. So much trade media journalism was carried throughout the 19th, 20th centuries that would be considered thought leadership by today's standards. And as content marketing matured and evolved, it took a place alongside thought leadership as the media landscape diversified. By the 1990s, the term thought leadership began to enter common parlance. And in 2010 to 2020 to the present, as I've written here, thought leadership, saturation and abuse. So it's interesting if you think about it, how it took so long for thought leadership to become an accepted term to describe that certain kind of authoritative writing. I mean, which kind of makes sense when you consider, for example, that the whole concept of content marketing was quite novel and wasn't even defined as such also until the 1990s. So it was similarly in that decade that a separate label was given to a form of content marketing that, and this is what we're going to talk about, I think can be distinguished from content marketing on a few grounds, and was much more congruous and similar to the other kind of activity I've discussed here, the op-eds and editorials and so on and so forth. Dictionary definitions of thought leadership and thought leaders. So let's go firstly with marketing insight group, a type of content marketing. I've highlighted here in orange what I thought, the facets of these definitions that I thought were interesting. So Michael Brenner of Marketing Insight Group says that thought leadership is a type of content marketing. Now, I actually don't think that that's incorrect, far be it for me to argue with these eminent marketers. I simply think that, once you draw the distinction between thought leadership and content marketing, however you want to conceive of the Russian dolls, that thought leadership fits within content marketing or it's separate from it, you can argue that point. I don't think that's the important point. So he says a type of content marketing where you tap into the talent, experience and passion inside your business or from your community to consistently answer the biggest questions That's worth emphasizing on the minds of your target audience. Next definition, thought leadership. This is from Evan Balin, First Page Sage. Thought leadership is insightful, compelling content that brings something new to your audience. So just in those two first definitions, we have the biggest questions on the mind of your audience. We have insights and we have compelling content. This is my definition that I wrote in my article in Entrepreneur, which I'll be talking about shortly. Thought leadership is focused on creating original insights into important issues and leveraging the caliber of that thinking to realize top of funnel business opportunities for careful nurturing. Final definition, Russ Klein of the American Marketing Association, the AMA. Thought leadership is a thought leader is an original and inspired thinker who takes principled stands and as a result introduces the element, this is interesting, introduces the element of tension that draws others to them. So that's actually kind of almost, I guess, the most you could say intellectual of the definitions in that. Inherent in that idea of creating some kind of insight that's disruptive and interesting and original, there's that element of tension between the established modes of thinking or the common thoughts that are going on in an industry or in a debate within an industry and disrupting that. And that necessarily creates tension. And the way he describes the mechanics of thought leadership is that it's through that tension that thought leadership attracts people. And we'll talk about later how attraction and awareness are the key top of funnel activities that thought leadership plays into. Thought leadership's essential elements are, in my view, I have 4 plotted here. Insights. Thought leadership needs to contain insights. It has to have something that ideally hasn't been said before, some information. If you can bring original statistics, if you can do your own research, that's going to make your thought leadership much stronger. You can also do secondary research, so take somebody else's research and do analysis on that to, again, come up with some insight. So that's really, really important. And it, certainly that came across in those definitions that thought leadership has to have insights. It can't just be white noise. Quality thinking, that kind of goes sort of hand in hand in the sense that ideally the insights and the information, because as we're going to be seeing, the thought leadership is really targeted at a B2B executive audience, that you want to make sure that what you are getting across through those insights is something that could objectively be considered high quality. Originality, I have up there as well, and I kind of hit on that. Ideally original insights. The caveat that I typically say here is, if you're not the first, be among the first. So don't be, I talked in my entrepreneur blog about the coronavirus, just as an example of, something that people are talking about. The coronavirus is here. We're all working from home. You can even hear in the tone of my voice the fatigue of this argument. We're all working from home. It's going to change things. It's going to be the catalyst for working from home. Once something has been said that many times, it becomes trite, and I don't think that would be thought leadership if you wrote a thought piece today on that topic. So I think you have to be either the very first person or among the first pool of people. That's in an ideal situation. So what I'm going to be talking about here, or basing the next few slides on, is my article, the 4 key differences between thought leadership and content marketing. That is up there on entrepreneur.com, so you can Google that and find my article. That's the source. Thought leadership versus content marketing, key differences. So let me now go a little bit deeper into each of the 4 differences I talked about here. So we're going to talk about the communication level, thought leadership being a peer-to-peer form of communication versus content marketing being a top-down form of communication. We're going to talk about the commodity, about how thought leadership leverages the power of thinking and original insights and thoughts and quality of thoughts, versus content marketing. And I'm not putting content marketing down here by saying more generic content marketing. I'm just comparing the two. Commodity of content marketing being value, Thought leadership being a top of sales funnel activity, and we're going to see on one of the coming slides the marketing funnel, and just I'll explain exactly how that works. Top to mid funnel, tofu to mofu, and that sounds ridiculous. That's top of funnel and mid funnel for content marketing. We're not talking about vegetarian food. And the distribution channels for thought leadership being typically offsite, because that is where it can be, and a lot of marketing teams are already managing their on-site channels. And thought leadership, if they are separating out the efforts of these two forms of writing and marketing and communicating, it can be on that basis that this can be an offsite project. Content marketing can be an on-site project. And in the kind of large enterprise environment, that can often mean that there are different marketing teams working on those two activities because they're different channels. So that's its distinguishing factor. Okay, top down versus peer-to-peer. Let's talk more about this. Effective thought leadership needs to be a peer-to-peer marketing activity. So think of one CTO, chief technology officer, talking to another CTO, writing some piece about a new radio network for the IoT, and that's being published through a trade media publication about the IoT that probably nobody who isn't working in the IoT actually ever reads. So that is what I think, if you want to think of a classical example of what thought leadership could look like, that would be pretty close to it. Nevertheless, there's a major risk in distributing thought leadership that doesn't contain sufficient value. So the connection here is that if you are going peer-to-peer, you want to make sure that you don't waste the time of your peer group. So that, meaning if you're a CTO writing for a CTO, then don't lead with, and let's go back to this IoT example, don't lead with an education of what is the IoT and what are radio networks. That's way too elementary. For content marketing, if you're just talking to the end user, that kind of content, that kind of tone of voice, that kind of language could be perfectly fine, but it wouldn't be appropriate for thought leadership. Thought leadership consumers and decision makers are expecting something on their level. So again, peer-to-peer. Authors need, and this is, we're talking here about Edelman LinkedIn, to avoid being perceived as more white noise. Tone of voice is important. So with thought leadership, we're looking at being informational. We're looking at conveying original insight. We're not looking at being overly promotional or too salesy. And distinguishing again between content marketing, where, if you're distributing content marketing through your blog, then that really isn't a concern. Of course, you're probably focused on providing value and not being too, being tactful about how you do it. But you don't have that kind of concern in the same way. Timeliness and brevity are essential qualities. 87 and 75% of respondents to LinkedIn Edelman said that. We'll talk about LinkedIn Edelman shortly. The guiding principle, thought leadership needs to pander to the sensibilities of a senior level reading audience. That, if you want to just think about it in a nutshell, can be how you conceive of it. Thought leadership leverages thinking instead of value. So here you have your conversion funnel, your marketing funnel on the right of the screen here, with awareness, interest, desire, and action, top of funnel, mid funnel, and bottom of funnel. So thought leadership is about using the power of thinking and the sharing of valuable original insights to forge a connection. Now, the interesting thing about thought leadership is I think it can be a initial connection. So the example I've used before on the DSR Ghostwriting podcast is writing a thought piece, as people tend to call them, that really resonates with the target audience, and perhaps just the fact that thought piece appears on LinkedIn, for example, is enough to capture the interest and get you on the radar of somebody in your industry. That person would probably know already the competitor landscape. Remember, we're talking about senior level here for a lot of the time in thought leadership. That person would already know who you are, but now you're on their radar. Now they know where you stand, what you're about, that you're a quality thinker. And that would open up that relationship, provide the initial touch point that could be later developed. Content marketing, by contrast, we're talking about exploiting value. So, very much focused on what kind of information can we create for our blog, for our whatever assets you want to use for inbound marketing and content marketing. Whatever can be put up there on a website or on a blog, on a gated downloads page to attract people and deliver value to them so they keep coming back is the kind of mechanism at the heart of content marketing. So for thought leadership, we're talking about compelling insights that will stir curiosity in the reader. I need to fix a little typo here I've just noticed. That escaped the proofreading of this presentation. So excuse that. Curiosity, awareness, further business opportunities. So once you've got them curious about thought leadership, then the awareness is going to develop out of that endogenously. They're going to know who you are. They're going to know roughly what you stand for. And what your thinking is, and that comes across really in Edelman. That a lot of times it's about evaluating what is an organization's thinking, what's the caliber of their thinking, and what are they thinking about, and that in turn leads to further business opportunities. Content marketing, we are looking at delivering valuable information, delivering value from that information, stimulating awareness and interest. So we're already going one level down the funnel there. To the interest stage, and then from that going into purchasing decisions. So I think the main point there is that relative to thought leadership, content marketing is more focused on converting end users to business, whereas thought leadership is often more about just piquing interest, starting at the top of the funnel, but it could be a smaller funnel in terms of the potential clients there. Talking about potentially vendors who you might be integrating with versus all your end users. So smaller funnel, potentially a higher ticket funnel. So you might be trying to get the interest of these people to conclude a multi-million contract versus just trying to sell a SaaS subscription to each individual customer. So the measures of success for thought leadership, you can look at it as it should pique the interest of the readership. It has to get across novel information and insights, and it should demonstrate authority and competency through doing that. Content marketing, it has to deliver value, and it should establish an ongoing relationship and create out of that a desire for the product or service. Let's talk a little bit more about the funnel in terms of the distinguishing features. So thought leadership aims to build awareness amongst a smaller and more select target audience than content marketing. Build brand perception, develop a reputation for authoritative thinking among a wider one. Content marketing can straddle multiple stages of the marketing funnel, which is pictured on the right of the slide. For example, blog posts can target top of funnel, ebooks could target mid-funnel, and case studies and testimonials could target bottom of funnel or BOFU. So it's fair to say that thought leadership is more limited in terms of the stages of the funnel that it can tap. Very good for generating awareness. When you do get people down to the level of nearing making a purchasing decision, sometimes content marketing assets are more appropriate because you're not really focused on delivering insight anymore. If you look at the examples I gave for the final pieces of content, you're no longer concerned with delivering insights. You're just trying to give your potential customer that final social proof to carry them over the line. Thought leadership needs to be ideally insightful and non-promotional, so options in terms of available formats are more limited, as I've just mentioned. Thought leadership top of funnel, content marketing straddles the funnel, and it has a more direct route to conversion through simply driving people down that funnel. For thought leadership, it can be just leaving the marketing funnel at awareness, and then from that point onwards it's all about sales. So there's an important difference there. In terms of distribution channels, thought leadership and content marketing are ideal complements to one another because they can cover different distribution channels. So For example, you can use your content marketing to, take advantage of your managed resources, your on-site resources. That's your blog, could be your Medium, could be your LinkedIn. Content marketing can be published on-site and on managed channels. So that would be a problem really with thought leadership. Content marketing would be a problem to publish that on offsite, non-managed channels, because it would be too promotional. So but that's not cut and dried, because if certain precautions are taken, by which I mean you make sure that there are adequate insights, or you add adequate insights to a piece of content marketing, you change the tone of voice a little, you twist and you turn the piece. In that case, content refurbishment, going from content marketing to thought leadership, and spinning out on-site content for off-site publication is entirely possible. So that's good news for producers, because it's all about maximizing reach, maximizing audience with limited resources, or that's how it has to be for a lot of marketing teams. Offsite channels are good for increasing reach and bringing messaging out to new audiences. And of course, from an SEO standpoint, doing things like guest posting and posting contributed content on publications with websites will develop a company's domain authority, the authority of the website, through accruing backlinks. But that's an SEO point. Quick chart here for comparing. So you have on-site, you have off-site, you have managed, you have non-managed. On-site being your own website, or some digital property that you own. Off-site being some digital property you don't own. So you don't own medium.com, you don't own linkedin.com. You can't edit or control those websites. So they're off-site locations, as is trade media. Managed as in editorial control. So you can publish whatever you want to Medium or LinkedIn. You don't need to go through an editorial cycle, exception there being publishing for something like a Medium publication. But if you're just publishing for yourself on Medium, then you do not need to submit to an editor. You can publish 100 times a day or 0 times a day as you see fit. So for content marketing, the company blog, Medium and LinkedIn are all fine, but you're going to have a very hard time trying to get those published in external websites. Perhaps if you're doing a pay-for-play opportunity in which you have to pay to get published. Advertorials would actually be kind of a gray area here. There's a little tick mark missing at the bottom, and you could argue that an advertorial is kind of content marketing carried in trade media or in an editorial publication. So imagine a question mark for that little box there. Thought leadership, it's actually more open if you think about it. You can put it on your blog, you can put it on Medium and LinkedIn, and you can try to get it published as well. Okay, so let's just run through the Edelman LinkedIn findings. This is the Edelman B2B Thought Leadership Impact Study, latest edition. You can download a PDF with a summary of my findings at dsrghostwriting.com/downloads, and you can get the original PDF by just Googling B2B Thought Leadership Impact Study, and Edelman have this up on their website that you can scroll through, a nice looking PDF. So basically 3,000 business people, executives were polled ranging in seniority as such: 33% managers, 38% directors. Organization size, 46% of respondents at 1 to 200 person organizations, 14% at 201. That's actually quite a big catchment there. 201 to 1,000 organizations, one headcount organizations. So in terms of their engagement with thought leadership, half of decision makers spend 1 hour or more per week reading thought leadership. 31% spend 1 to 3 hours per week. 17% spend more than 4 hours. So that's actually pretty significant in my view, the amount of attention that executives give to thought leadership. So if your thought leadership isn't working, I think it's a cop out to say, oh, people aren't reading thought leadership anymore. At least when this study was done, that was not the case. People were engaging with it. Thought leadership increases trust. So Edelman, LinkedIn, that's what ELI stands for here. They put together what they call their brand impact index, designed to assess the effect of thought leadership upon the soft intangible metric of brand perception. Three different components to that index, assessing differences in respect, perception of capabilities, and trust. Bottom line, that went up 88%. So thought leadership definitely, to put it crudely, can make you look good, can make you look competent. It can bolster the image of yourself or your company. 88% of people said, that it basically increased their trust. They thought that the authoring party was better, basically. Now, sales. So that was soft, and this is hard. Soft metrics, hard metrics. Sales being a hard metric. Well, what did it actually do in terms of, boosting stuff like RFP opportunities? The answer was that, I've just skipped a slide here. 49% generated RFP invitations, led to awarding of business 42%, upselling 53%, cross-selling 54%. Additionally, important point here, thought leadership allows authors to command a premium for the good services they provide, 42%. So not only can thought leadership boost your likelihoods, increase your likelihood of being included in a tender process, a request for proposals, it can actually allow you to make more money, essentially, by pricing your goods and services at a premium, and that comes back to brand positioning and you being perceived as a very competent player. However, thought leadership is underperforming. So only 15% of respondents said that thought leadership was very good or excellent. 28%, by contrast, rated most thought leadership they consume as mediocre. So there is a widespread lack of enthusiasm about the quality of thought leadership. The causative factors tend to be it's just not delivering enough value or insight. We'll talk about that in a bit. Only 28% of respondents said they reliably derive value from thought leadership. That's pretty bad, actually. So let's just roll back a little here. So thought leadership there's an appetite for thought leadership. People are reading it. They are taking time. These C-suite, busy, high-level people are actually taking time out of their busy days to read thought leadership. However, they're not waxing lyrical about it. Only 15% say it's great, and less than 1/3 reliably say that they reliably get value out of it. It's worth pointing out, if you do a bad job, conversely, people will regard your organization less well. Conversely, on the hard side, they'll be less likely to award you business. The relevant percentages on the flip side there are 38% and 27%. Putting those four numbers together into this table here, perception, 88%, if you do it well, your perception will be increased. Comparatively, 49%, your sales will be increased. So thought leadership is more effective at increasing soft metrics, stuff like perception, than it is at increasing sales. A similar story on the negative side. The differences are a bit blunted, so the perceptional decrease isn't quite as bad and the sales increase isn't quite as bad. But interestingly, if you look at those four figures, there is that correlation between the two on both sides. What readers are looking for: 87% want timeliness in terms of the information they receive, and 75% want brevity. So that's really how thought leadership needs to be packaged. It needs to address topical issues, and it needs to do so in a fairly concise and compelling and succinct way. So those are the two things that basically people are missing. They're not delivering, and consequently there is this kind of unmet need and dissatisfaction out there in the reader market. In terms of how thought leadership gets to people, so 54%, Edelman LinkedIn asked, how did you find your last piece of thought leadership you read? How did you find that? 54% said it was through discovery. They found it by research. 26% received it directly from either the authoring company or through a referral. And it came through an amplified channel for 18% of people. And interestingly, that can mean both paid and earned channels. Okay. conclusions out of this would be, from my perspective, authors really need to work on typical organic SEO should absolutely not be neglected for thought leadership. You want to make it easy for people to discover it. Very important to have relations, again, because this is at the kind of B2B personal level of operations of playing. Those personal relationships are mattered, because 26% of people got the thought leadership they read through a referral. Earned and paid channels can, of course, boost the visibility, and 58% of producers said that promotional follow-up and distribution support were among the most important drivers of thought leadership success. Where can you carry your thought leadership? Where can it be? The on-site resources would be, you can put it out as blogs. You can have thought leadership as lead magnets. That's actually quite a popular one. You can have it as ungated downloads, just handouts sitting up there on your website, the downloads page, ready for anybody to grab. No contact details required. You can put it out in your newsletter. You can put it out through social media, etc. So really, there aren't specific channels typically used for thought leadership. It's actually, there's overlap here between content marketing and the offsite channels. And I just have Medium and LinkedIn here because people constantly ask about them. You can go through editorial channels that you would have a tough time targeting through content marketing, and of course Medium and LinkedIn. What can thought leadership be? So I take a broad definition of this. Blogs, articles, white papers, and ebooks are, to my mind, all perfectly good formats for in which to contain your thought leadership. But I also think that speeches are a perfect opportunity. So if you're speaking at a conference, why not integrate that? If you're putting together a thought leadership strategy, why not integrate speaking appearances in the real world with your blogs and coordinate the messaging? That's actually partially why I include speech writing in my service offering. And likewise, video and audio. So if you're doing a separate strategy, separate messaging, separate target audience, you can use the same channels essentially as content marketing. Okay, final points here. Content marketing and thought leadership are older than you might expect, although neither was necessarily known by that name until relatively recently. Both content marketing and thought leadership entered the popular lexicon in the 90s. Content marketing is focused on delivering immediate value, or relatively immediate value, to the reader. It doesn't have to be non-promotional. It can be as promotional as you want. It is kind of a hierarchical form of communication. Typically, the blog is written to the end user, in a kind of company to person way. So there is that kind of built-in hierarchy to it. And can be carried primarily on site. Thought leadership, subtle is a key word here. Subtly position oneself as an expert/authority on a key topic through delivering original insights, sometimes derived from original research, developing awareness, and leveraging that introduction later. So again, coming back to the marketing funnel, more top of funnel. Content marketing is often direct to consumers, B2C, typical, B2C blog. It's often small ticket. Thought leadership, by comparison, is often a B2B activity, creating thought leadership to target, big, large organizations and selling to other companies, often in high ticket sales processes. That is it. We have reached the end of the slides. The website again is dsrghostwriting.com. Thought leadership and content marketing for technology companies. And DSR Ghostwriting can be found on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and the website, the email address rather, to get in touch for anyone that wants to. You can go on, there's a contact form on the website, or you can drop an email to info@dsrghostwriting.com. This is an attempt to avoid these spam robots. So it's that email address in full is info@dsrghostwriting.com. Thank you very much for watching, and feel free to check the website for the next time for the live version of this webinar.